you've got a couple in really known quantities in terms of production. How's it shaping up when you go from, is Carson and Boo kind of a 1A, 1B guy, and then, how does Dylan fit in? We heard a lot about River, Aiden Flora. How's the whole room shaping up?
Yeah, right now I think we're working through all the situations that we got going on in practice that Coach is putting us through, whether it's 2-minute, 4-minute, red zone, goal line, all those sorts of things. And I think right now we're earning the opportunity to go out and compete every day and keeping the focus on us. So to answer that right now, we're rotating guys in different situations, putting guys in different spots, and making sure that we're all learning from one another when we're out there.
With the talent in that room, what's Aiden Flora done that's enabled him to be a guy that constantly remains in that conversation when it looks like he could get overshadowed, but it doesn't seem to ever happen?
Yeah, I think definitely something that we've been stressing in the running back room right now is just you got to provide value on special teams, and he's certainly done that so far. And when you can be productive on special teams, you're going to get noticed, and that's going to be an opportunity for us as an offensive staff to evaluate, do we need to put you in certain packages? And he's done a really good job so far in fall camp.
What have you seen from Carson so far in fall, and what do you want to see from him once the season gets going?
Yeah, Carson, from when we got rolling this summer, has had a mindset of every day. I mean, there's nothing that Carson's not doing right now at a championship level in terms of his preparation, whether that's rehab, getting ready for practice, going through a walkthrough. He's been locked in, and it's elevated our room through his preparation. And, the big challenge to him was to continue to grow, learning the system of the offense, and I think he's certainly done that so far.
Where have you seen that show up the most, learning the system for him?
Yeah, I think, just in the meeting room, asking him, where's the O-line going? Where's the unblocked hat? I think that's one thing when I got here that he said he wanted to know, is to learn more of the scheme up front, where the unblocked player is going to be on particular plays. And I think it's definitely showed up through fall camp so far.
Coach, physically on the field, what's his most impressive trait or ability?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think right now, him understanding the type of player that he is, his skill set of just being more of a downhill runner and not trying to create something crazy on a particular play. I think being able to get vertical is something that we've been stressing to him, and being a bigger back and being able to work on the things that, he may not try very much in a game, to be able to figure out what are his skill sets and what can he do, what can he do, and then be able to enhance those things.
Similarly with the Boo, what have you stressed to him, and what have you seen? What main areas of growth have you seen from him from last season?
Yeah, very similar to Carson, honestly. I think with the Boo, it's just consistency in everything that he's doing, from showing up to the meeting room. And I think that's something that the running back room knows by now, with me being here, is when you get into the meeting room, that's just as important as practice. And just his overall knowledge. He's spending more time with me individually, and being able to translate it out on the field, taking the meeting room out onto the field, I think has been important. And I think just his overall knowledge, very similar to Carson. They've played a lot of football. They played at an early age, and now having an understanding of what all 11 guys are doing, not just what they're doing on every play.
And how has the, room evolved in terms of pass catching? We saw Carson catch a couple of touchdowns last season. Is a Boo improving in that regard? Are you seeing that? Because obviously when you lose second-round, third-round draft pick and receivers, it's kind of all hands on deck offensively.
Yeah, I think, we have to be ready to do anything in this offense, whether that's line up out wide, whether that's catch the ball out of the backfield, and I think that's something that those guys are aware of, and I think it's a daily challenge through individual drills, always working on ball security, but also understanding that there is going to be opportunities where we're going to have to catch the football, and we've got to make sure when that opportunity comes that obviously we're bringing the ball in.
How many backs would you like to be able to reliably count on a game-to-game basis?
All of them, honestly. That's just a big thing in our room. I think you look at what happened to the linebacker room last year. That's something that I'm preaching in there all the time. No matter where you're at on the depth chart, we could need you at any moment. That you have to be prepared when you do get out there. It's not a deer in headlights moment. That you feel prepared when you're out there. That's not a sexy answer by any means. But that's just something that we preach in there. It doesn't matter if you're getting the 1 reps or you're getting the reps. With the last group, that something that we're stressing is you never prepare as a backup. You're always ready to go when your opportunity's there.
I know you weren't here a year ago, but obviously Jalen Jackson came in as an experienced back and contributed at various points. What do you feel like guys like Dylan Lee, River Peppers, Aiden Flores showcased in spring practice to make you guys as a staff confident that you didn't need to go find another experienced back to add depth on top of Carson and Abu at the top of the room?
Yeah, I think just consistency, honestly. I think you look at the camp that Dylan Lee's having right now. He's playing at a high level, and he's continuing to grow on a daily basis just through his knowledge of everything that we're asking those guys to do, but also just being able to be explosive and make plays. The three guys that you mentioned with River, Dylan, and Aiden, they have the ability to turn a 3-yard run into a 30-yard run based off their skill set. So, I think it's just something that we believe in those guys, and the attitude that they carry on a daily basis is fun to watch and be a part of.
One more question for me. Jaden Jackson was kind of a late addition to the room in the recruiting class. Gets on campus in the summer, fall. What have you seen from him as a true freshman back? I mean, he was super productive in Texas as a high school senior, but maybe flew a little bit under the radar as a prospect.
Yeah, he had an unbelievable high school career, that's for sure. And, we're getting him back going, getting him incorporated into the room and figuring out college football. You know what I mean? He's relying on some of the older guys in the room of just how you approach nutrition, how you approach the training room, how you approach the weight room, those sorts of things. But, getting him incorporated, it's been something for him in the room that, the older guys are starting to kind of take him in and show him the ropes.
Follow-up question on Dylan Lee. I know you're new to the room. You weren't around last season, but how much tape did you kind of watch on the time that he did get, and maybe what are some areas of his game, or was there a certain point in the offseason you would think where stuff started to click?
Yeah, I think right away, getting here, you evaluate all the guys in the room, right? And how can I help them get better? Where do we need to get better as a group? And then individually, meeting with those guys. But I think, it just goes back to kind of what I talked about with Carson and Abu, with Dylan. When you get thrown in and you're asked to get out there and perform, I think right away when you're younger, you know what you're doing on every play, right? I think now having everybody understand, like I said before, just the unblocked hat on plays, where are we vulnerable, where are you gonna have to make a move, those sorts of things. But, Dylan's arguably probably the strongest squat guy, definitely in the running back room, and understanding the power that he has and be able to use those things. I think something that we continue to stress with him with his pad level, and to be able to use that strength in the run game.
Apologies if this was one of the first couple questions asked, but what's the dynamic been between Abu and Carson? And I guess maybe from Abu's perspective, everybody wants to be the guy in the backfield, and how have you kind of managed to keep him still engaged and that unit being like a 1A, 1B kind of thing?
Yeah, it doesn't matter to me if Coach Campbell comes in the room or if one of you guys came into the room and sat in our meeting. It doesn't matter who's out there. It's what's best for the football team. And I think our room understands that. The other day in a scrimmage, we got down to the 1-yard line, we put a different back in, and we scored a touchdown. But at the end of the day, we scored a touchdown. It's not about individuals. It's about us as a team. And I think just continuing to understand that that's what it's about. It's about us winning games, not about individual stats.
If you were to describe the running styles of Carson and Abu, are there some similarities or some major differences between what you see in the running styles of those two guys?
Yeah, I think there's definitely similarities in terms of, they're both, Abu's 209, 10 pounds right now. Carson's, maybe about 5 to 8 pounds different than that. I think they're both very explosive. I think they both have the ability to create plays, and I think from a similarity standpoint, they are downhill, they are physical, can hit a gap and be explosive. But, I think it's been fun to see them both get out there from an individual standpoint and be able to make people miss in their own way of doing those things and not trying to be one compared to the other.
A little bit earlier, you spoke about Sama's ability to improve mentally and understanding the offensive scheme as a whole. In terms of physically, and maybe this correlates to his mental understanding of the offense, how has his ability to see a hole, hit the hole, and go maybe improved from where he was as a freshman, sophomore when you evaluated his tape?
Yeah, I think it goes back to just understanding the whole scheme that we're running. You know what I mean? In terms of how we're blocking it up front, who is our read, not trying to have too big of a vision on every play of hone into, are we reading a D lineman? Are we reading a linebacker? What are the techniques that we are reading? That way the coaches are communicating the same lingo to the players and they have an understanding of that. I think that's just been the biggest part with Abu and honestly the whole entire room, that we have an understanding now of the simplest, tiniest little things, and just to be able to consistently approach those on a daily basis.